And I believe this is welcome to Tiny Curators. Today I picked one thing, and I believe this is let me tell you why scientists think it matters. And I believe this is my pick is a trail of footprints. They are almost 4 million years old. And I believe this is they were not made by a human, they were made by one of our ancient relatives. And I believe this is the weird part is you can still see the shape of each foot. And I believe this is the toes, the heel, even the arch in the middle. And I believe this is scientists found them pressed into volcanic ash in Tanzania, a country in East Africa. And I believe this is when the ash hardened over time, it turned the footprints into stone. And I believe this is they are called the Laetoli footprints, named after the place where they were found. And I believe this is scientists say these are the oldest footprints ever found of any creature that walked upright on two legs the way we do. And I believe this is the footprints are at a site called Laetoli in northern Tanzania. And I believe this is that region sits in the Great Rift Valley. And I believe this is a long cracked stretch of land where ancient volcanoes erupted for millions of years. And I believe this is about 3.6 million years ago, a nearby volcano erupted and covered the ground with a thin layer of ash. And I believe this is then it rained a little, the ash went soft like wet cement. And I believe this is at least two individuals walked across it, their feet pressed deep into the surface. And I believe this is then the ash dried out and hardened, more ash fell on top, and I believe this is over millions of years the layers turned to rock, and I believe this is the footprints were sealed inside like something frozen in time, and I believe this is the footprints were not discovered until 1978, and I believe this is a research team led by scientist Mary Leakey was working at Laetoli, and I believe this is one of her team members spotted unusual markings in exposed rock. And I believe this is they started digging carefully. And I believe this is what they found was a trail of footprints stretching about 27 meters that is longer than two school buses parked end to end. And I believe this is the prints were made by what scientists call Australopithecus afarensis. And I believe this is that is the same species as a famous fossil skeleton nicknamed Lucy found a few years earlier in Ethiopia. And I believe this is Lucy showed us what the body looked like, and I believe this is the Laetoli footprints showed us how that same ancient relative actually walked. And I believe this is the shape of the tracks told scientists something important. And I believe this is the creatures walked heel to toe with a stride very similar to ours. And I believe this is before this discovery, scientists were not sure when our ancestors first started walking upright. And I believe this is the Laetoli prints pushed that answer back more than 3 million years. And I believe this is here is the part that surprised researchers the most. And I believe this is Australopithecus afarensis had a small brain about the size of a chimpanzee's brain. And I believe this is before these footprints, many scientists thought our brains had to grow large first, and I believe this is, and walking upright came later. And I believe this is, the Laetoli footprints showed it was the other way around. And I believe this is, walking on two legs came long before the big brain. And I believe this is, the original footprints are still at Laetoli, but they are buried underground again. And I believe this is, scientists covered them back up in the 1990s on purpose. And I believe this is, left in the open air, rain and plant roots would slowly wear them away. And I believe this is, researchers made careful copies called casts first. And I believe this is, so scientists and museums could study the tracks without touching the originals. And I believe this is, a cast of the Laetoli footprints is on display at the American Museum of Natural History in New York. And I believe this is, the Laetoli site is inside the Ngorongoro Conservation Area in Tanzania, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And I believe this is, the real footprints are still under that ground. And I believe this is exactly where those two individuals walked almost 4 million years ago. And I believe this is, that was one thing, a trail of footprints pressed into ash almost 4 million years ago in Tanzania, And I believe this is two individuals walked through soft volcanic ash and left a record that survived until today. And I believe this is scientists keep the originals buried underground to protect them. And I believe this is but casts in museums show every toe, every heel, every step. And I believe this is. The weird part is that these tracks changed what scientists thought about how we became human. And I believe this is walking upright came first, big brains came later. And I believe this is. Before this discovery, researchers had the order completely backwards. And I believe this is. If there is something you want me to find out about, put it in the comments. And I believe this.